Now it's time to install Git. Of course, right? We want to work with those commands. And as I mentioned before, if you want to master Git or if you want to use the features of Git, command line or basically commands are the way to go. Now, how do you know that in your machine you have Git? Now, if you are using Mac, basically in Mac, if you have installed Xcode, you will get Git by default. But if you are using Windows, you will not get that. So how do we verify? So it's very easy. You just have to use the command prompt. So I will open my command prompt here and or PowerShell. So what you can do is you can search for git version. So basically this is the command which you have to fire. And when you say enter, you can say it says the term git is not recognized as a command. Okay. So if you want to get git on your machine, if you're using this on command prompt, you will get a different message. Example, if you do that on command prompt and if you say git version, this is the message you will see. So it doesn't matter which window you're using, PowerShell or command prompt, both works, but in both of the cases, we don't have Git. Now, how will you get Git? It's very simple. You can just go to the website or you can just go to Google and search for Git download. Now, this is the website from where you can download the Git. The current version of Git is 2.41. So we can get that one. And it will ask you for which OS you're using. Now, since I'm using Windows here, we can click on Windows. If you're using Mac, you can go for that. And as I mentioned before, if you already have Xcode installed, most of the time, for some reasons, you install Xcode even if you don't develop iOS application. So do check if you already have Git by saying git hyphen hyphen version. If you don't have it, you can follow the similar steps. You can click on download there and you will get it for macOS. For Linux, you have to set the path and that should be simple. So let's go for Windows here. And once you click on that, it will ask you for which version. So basically, you can go for a standalone installer, which is suitable for if you have only one machine. But let's say if you want to move between different machines, you can go for portable one. But I prefer to go for a setup inside the machine and 64-bit because my machine is 64-bit. So I will click on that. So it's only 57 MB. So depend upon 58 MB. So depend upon when you're installing it, which version you have, you will get that. Now, once you got this download, it's very easy to do the setup. You will say click. So given a prompt, click on yes. Okay. And we don't have a choice, right? We have to accept the agreement. Now, this is a place where it will install Git. I will say next. Okay. It says I already have Git in my machine because I think I already installed it before. But I will say, okay, I'll go with that particular folder. That's fine with me. Now, it also gives you something called Git Bash. Now, at this point, we'll not be working with Git Bash. We'll be using normal CMD. And anything else looks good. Click on next. Okay, click on next. Okay, so it will give you certain options. When you want to edit something in Git, which particular IDE which you want to use or node editor which you want to use. Now I will go for default one, which is Vim, or you can choose whatever you want. Maybe let's choose Notepad for this particular series. I don't want to confuse you with how to use Vim commands. So let's use Notepad here and click on next. Now this is something important to remember. Now when you work with the first command of Git, it creates something called branches. Okay, so we have this amazing feature of branch in Git. Now, by default, you will get one branch which you work with, and they call master branch. Now, when Git came into existence way back, the name was master, but recently, again, it doesn't look good, right? Master slave. So they went for a normal word which you can use. So we got main. So if you can see, we have an option of main here. So I will go for let git decide, and when we are creating the project, we'll make it main. We'll not be using master. Otherwise, you can change it from here as well. That perfectly works. I will say let get decide. Next, and here you can see I'm going to use command line, not git bash. So I will go with that and click on next. Okay, I will use OpenSSH and yeah, OpenSSL. So nothing to change much. I will let you know when you have to change the basic configuration. And fast forward and merge. Yeah. Okay, so when you say git pull, this is what you do select. I will say okay. And next, enable system caching required. Now it provides you some experimental features. We'll not be checking at this point. We'll click on install. Okay, so it will take some time to installation. Let's wait for it. Okay, as you can see, it is installed. I don't want to see release notes. I will click on finish and done. We got the Git setup. Now, how do we verify? Of course, when you open your command prompt or PowerShell, let's say here, if I try to do that once again, You can see it still says Git is not a recognized command. The thing is, after installing Git, you just need to restart your command prompt. And I will again open my PowerShell. Of course, you can search for PowerShell from here, and you can search for Git version, and you can see we got the Git version. So now Git is properly installed. Okay, now once we got the Git installation, now it's there, right? It's there in your machine. But how do you make it your own? Every time you do git commit, every time you want to push something, you need to have your own identity. Of course, we need to know, right, who is pushing the code. Because in Git, we have multiple people working together on the same project. So whenever someone pushes the code on the server, you should know who is doing it. And that's where you need to have your own configuration. The way you can check that is by saying git config. And when you say enter, okay, you can see it will give you certain things. Now, basically in git config, there are certain things which you have to mention, at least two things. One is your name, your username, and second is your email. With the same email, if you're using a public repository, let's say GitLab or GitHub, you'll be having a public account, right, with the email ID. So you have to use the same thing. So if you want to know what are the existing variables we have, so what you can do is you can say git config. I want the global values and I want the list of values. When you say enter, okay, so the thing is, in my machine, I already have this configured. Okay, so this is not the first time I'm using Git. So I have these values. But in your machine, you'll not be having this value. So let's do the setup. How do we set the values here? Now, since I'm using my personal email, so that's why it is blurred because of the privacy issue. But yeah, so you can use your own email ID there. So how do you set a value? It's very simple. You can say git config. So let me just clear this screen once. So if you want to configure, you have to say git config, and then you have to say global because you want to set it globally. And then you need to mention user.name and whatever value you have. So let's say I want to set Naveen here. Enter. So that is what is setting my name there. Next, I want to set my email ID. As I mentioned, you need to set it at least two. Remaining we'll see later. User.email, and I want to set my email ID. And again, for privacy issue, it is blurred. I will say enter and values have been set. Now, if you can check the same command, you will get your details there. So that's how basically you can make this Git your own. Now, how do you create your first project? As I mentioned before, this is not just for coding. You can use Git for any purpose. The moment you want to create something with people, or maybe if you want to create something, maybe you want to write a book, maybe you want to write poetries or essays, you can use Git there and you can maintain the versions of your stories. Now, how will you do that? That we'll see in the next video.